Konnichiwa, friends! I am Sekai X Arts and Animations, and I have been really wanting to improve my art lately, especially my rendering. It just never looks quite as nice as I want it to. Now for reference, my ideal style would be a mix of Love Nikki, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Genshin and Honkai Star Rail splash art style, Hana-Q, and Shining Nikki's 2D style. I imagine them blending together like this: Genshin and Star Rail for like the magic effects, Three Houses for the more realistic anime face, Hana-Q's style for the eyes, and Love Nikki and Shining Nikki for the hair and clothes rendering. That would be my dream. Now, as I've been developing this style, I've noticed that I can't quite achieve my goals. I thought that repetition would be the key to nailing this down. However, after drawing the same thing over and over and over, I feel like I'm in the same place as before. Naturally, this really frustrated me, so I did research into what I was doing wrong, and came across a video that explained why some artists struggle to improve, which basically boiled down to not doing studies, and that really resonated with me. I've always avoided doing studies because it just sounded like a pain to sit down for weeks on end and draw the same thing over and over and meticulously critiquing my drawings. But I have come to realize that if I really want to improve and one day have my dream art style, that I have to bite the bullet and do studies. Now I'm going to break down my art study journey into a few parts based on what I need to get better at drawing. For now, these parts are number 1, clothes, number 2, eyes, number 3, skin, and number 4, hair. Today I am going to tackle clothing. Now in my opinion, either clothes or hair will probably be the most difficult thing to master, so I decided to put the two at the ends to kind of sandwich the easier studies. Well, easier. As I mentioned just a little bit ago, I really wanted to have clothing that looks like the game Love Nikki and Shining Nikki. If any of you have played those games or looked up pictures, their clothing is nuts. It's super intricate and detailed and complicated because, well, it's a dress-up game, and having pretty clothes is kind of the point. Anyways, I think I'm going to start mastering some of the earlier, simpler clothing before I work my way up to like the grand prize mega fancy suits. I'll also probably focus on different clothing pieces as well, along with throwing in a fair bit of real-life references. So right here, I have chosen Yejiao from Shining Nikki, and I'm just looking at and trying to replicate the way Shining Nikki renders her clothing. One thing that makes the study of Love Nikki and Shining Nikki so difficult is that I don't know who the artist or the team of artists is, nor can I find any videos of anyone doing work on this game. As such, I can't break down whatever process they used. All I can do is look at the reference image and kind of work my way backwards. Now this shouldn't be impossible. Plenty of people learn from real life, which of course has no speed paint you can watch. It just might make things a tad trickier. Just to address this real quick, I did start out this drawing by tracing this character because I'm studying the clothes rendering and not anatomy, and I wouldn't want to waste time on that right now when it's not what I'm focusing on. As I was going about this, I was just completely experimenting with what to do. I went in completely blind, not knowing what I was doing at all. However, as I was drawing random things, I did learn one thing that I probably need to add to my list of studies is drawing more dynamic clothing. Looking at Yejiao, she is standing pretty still, and yet her clothes still have many folds and wrinkles. This actually helps a lot when rendering, as the folds in her clothes give obvious places to have a light and shadow fall. As such, I need to work on drawing more dynamic clothing and have them sit on my characters more realistically. A lot of clothes sit on my characters very flat, and that's probably best for things like animations and comics where you're going to be drawing the same characters over and over, so you don't want them to be too detailed, but for my style, when I'm just doing still illustrations, the clothing should wrinkle and pull so that it will have more visual interest and I can have more detailed shading. In real life, of course, clothes fold and wrinkle because our bodies move in ways that manipulate them, squashing them in some places, pulling them in others, and folding, etc. Even very tight clothes will still have wrinkles, so I think that something I need to keep in mind is the way that clothes actually interact with the body. Okay, so from this first clothing study, what did I learn? Number 1, I need to draw more dynamic clothing from the start. Good rendering won't look good or make sense if the clothes are stuck to the character like a sticker. Also, drawing folds and wrinkles will help in placing the lights and shadows in the color and rendering phases. Number 2, drawing clothes is actually really fun. Now I mentioned earlier, but I hate doing studies, and overall this one took a whopping 7.5 hours, so I'd, love to get faster at it. And number 3, I figured what most of you would want to know is what process did I use? Well, as I said before, I did some random experimenting, but I can kind of give you the basic layers I used and what order I put them in. The first layer was of course the base color. I think we all know what that is. Obviously, it's just the plain, basic no light, no shadow color of whatever object you're drawing is. In some places, like the choker and the gray side of the dress and the coat, I put down a base light, basically just adding back in places where the fabric would catch the light a bit or places where the shading made things too muddy. I'll put a little asterisk on my list so that you guys know what I did and didn't do everywhere. The asterisk just means that I didn't do this on every part of the drawing. After that, I applied the base shadows. To do that, I just scribbled with my brush wherever the shadows would generally be around and I blurred it. Next is the hard shadows. I did this on a multiply layer and then used the same color I did for the base shadow to put in harsher edges where the fabric folded. I also blurred these shadows the farther they got from the object that was creating the shadow. Next, I made another multiply layer for the soft shadows, which was basically just going in and darkening places where the base shadow and the hard shadow needed to be more defined. On top of this, I put the cast shadow, which is just a hard edged line where other objects are casting shadow onto the surface. For example, the cardigan is casting a shadow onto the dress, or the sleeves are casting a shadow onto the skirt. I again blurred these as I got farther away from the shadow source. And finally, in some places, I added in a transition color. I don't know if you guys have seen this art tip, but basically where the shadow meets the base color, people will sometimes add in a quote-unquote transition color to kind of soften the shadow transition. Usually this is like a peachy red, so I did this in a few places, as well as adding it back into places like the transparent sleeve, and also onto just some of the gray parts where the light would be tinted pink because of her skin color. I think for my very first clothing study, this went pretty well. I'll definitely keep practicing this to improve my skills and my speed though. I'd also really like to develop in other styles in the future as well. Painterly anime, realistic, chibi, cartoon, Ghibli, etc. Which will cause me to do more studies in the future because this one was actually a lot more fun than I thought it would be. But for now, I'm just going to continue doing the studies that I mentioned at the beginning of this video in hopes to improve and develop my own art style. I think after a couple more repetitions of trying to copy and experimenting with different fabric types, I'll probably apply everything I've learned to a piece of clothing that is original, without direct reference that I'm copying from, so that the clothing and rendering skills can be applied to original outfits and characters in the future. I'll be sure to keep you all updated on my progress and share what I've learned with you guys along the way so that you all can improve right along with me. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you all in the next one. Also, I promise that I'm still working on my Storytime animatic. It just turns out that drawing and recording a near half-hour-long video all by yourself takes a lot more time than I thought. Man, Jaden makes it look so easy. Anyways, I promise I'll keep working on it and have it out as soon as possible. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.